illustrative brief chronology of Jewish history. It should be noted that some part of this chronology, especially the early period, is based on biblical stories which have not yet received full confirmation by archaeology. And so, the beginning period. According to the biblical version, somewhere between 1900-1700 BCE, Abram, by the command of God, along with his wife Sarah, his father Terah, his nephew Lot, and his people, set out for Canaan from his native city of Ur, following the route shown on the map. It should be noted that at that time, Canaan was inhabited by Semitic peoples who spoke a dialect of the ancient Hebrew language. According to another theory proposed by the renowned archaeologist and linguist Zecharia Sitchin, Abram's father was a Sumerian priest who secretly preached the faith in a single God. When this was exposed, he had to flee from the city of Ur to Canaan, along with his son Abram and others. Zecharia Sitchin discovered this information in Sumerian cuneiform texts. By around 1300 BCE, all 13 tribes of Israel had formed. The genealogical tree from the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is shown in this figure. This period of history is very vividly and accurately described in Thomas Mann's novel Joseph and His Brothers, according to the Bible. One of the most vivid biblical events of that period was the exodus of the Jews from Egypt, under the leadership of Moses Rabbeinu, which occurred around 1270-1230 BCE. 1024 BCE is considered the foundation of the Kingdom of Israel. Each tribe of Israel received a territory under its control, except for the tribe of Levi. The descendants of the tribe of Levi were prescribed to serve Yahweh at the temple. The first king of the Kingdom of Israel was Saul from the tribe of Benjamin. Saul ruled from 1024 to 1006 BCE. After the death of Saul and his son in battle with the Philistines, the throne was seized by David, a descendant of an ancient Jewish lineage who had served as a musician at King Saul's court. David ruled from 1006 to 928 BCE. He significantly expanded the borders of the Israeli kingdom, captured Jerusalem, and made it the capital of Israel. After his death, his son Solomon inherited the throne. He reigned from 965 to 929 BCE. This was the period of the greatest flourishing of the Israeli kingdom. Solomon fulfilled his father David's dream by building and consecrating the first temple in Jerusalem. After Solomon's death, disputes among the tribes of Israel led to the split of the United Kingdom into the northern kingdom of Israel, with its capital Samaria, and the southern kingdom of Judah, with its capital Jerusalem. 200 years of peaceful existence of Israel and Judah were interrupted by an attack from the emerging powerful Assyrian Empire in the east. In 722 BCE, the Assyrians captured Samaria and exiled the 10 tribes of Israel. However, Judah remained unconquered after an unsuccessful siege of Jerusalem in 701 BCE. Nearly 100 years later, in 604 BCE, Judah fell under the control of the next powerful Near Eastern empire, Babylon, after several Jewish revolts against Babylonian rule in 587-586 BCE. King Nebuchadnezzar's army captured Jerusalem and destroyed the first temple of Jerusalem. The Jews were exiled to Babylon in 3 waves. The Babylonian captivity lasted 50 years. In 538 BCE, the next powerful empire, Persia, led by King Cyrus, conquered Babylon. King Cyrus issued a declaration allowing Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their second temple. This marked the end of the first temple period and the beginning of the second temple period. The second temple was built and consecrated in 515-516 BCE. And again, after 200 years, in 332 BCE, the Kingdom of Israel was captured by the troops of the superpower Alexander the Great during his campaign in Egypt. Jerusalem voluntarily opened its gates to Alexander the Great, who was tolerant of the religions and customs of the conquered peoples. However, after Alexander's death, the violent Hellenization of the Jews began to increase. For this reason, in 164 BCE, the Maccabean revolt took place, freeing Israel and Jerusalem from the Syrian Greeks. The rebels consecrated the Second Temple, and in honor of this event, the 8-day festival of Hanukkah was established. The candles miraculously burned for as many days, despite the practical absence of oil. The Maccabean dynasty ruled for 120 years. In 63 BCE, another superpower, the Roman Empire, during its campaign in Egypt, captured Israel and Judah. They became a Roman province just like the lands of the Britons, Germans, Franks, and others. From 40 to 4 BCE, the Edomite Herod, appointed by Rome, became the king of Israel, later known as Herod the Great. Herod the Great was a controversial king. On the one hand, he completely restored the Second Temple, transformed the Holy Land with grandiose building projects, and even showed concern for the people, saving them from famine. On the other hand, he shocked everyone with his paranoid cruelty. After his death from 6 CE, Judea lastly became a Roman province. In 28 CE, an event occurred in Jerusalem that left a deep mark on all subsequent centuries of human history. This was the crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth by the order of the Roman prefect Pontius Pilate. Subsequently, Christian religious figures would create a calumny against the Jews, blaming them for the death of Jesus. The years 63-73 were the most tragic years for the Jewish people of that period, marked by the great Jewish revolt against Roman rule, known as the Jewish War. This war is detailed in the eponymous book by its participant and eyewitness, who became a Roman captive, Josephus Flavius. His real name was Yosef ben Matityahu. The trigger for the revolt was the looting of one of the temple treasures by Roman barbarians, led by the greedy and bloodthirsty procurator Florus. The Jewish protests were suppressed by the unprecedented crucifixion of many residents of Jerusalem. Subsequently, events escalated rapidly. In the year 70, Roman troops, led by the future Emperor Titus, after a long and bloody siege, captured and completely destroyed Jerusalem and the Second Temple. Josephus Flavius, in his book, attributed this to the disobedience and intractability of the Jews. In 73, the great Jewish revolt was finally suppressed with the Roman capture of the impregnable fortress of Masada. Almost all defenders of the fortress ended their lives by killing each other. The years 132-136 saw Emperor Hadrian's decree renaming Jerusalem to Aelia Capitolina, and the prohibition of circumcision under penalty of death, which triggered the last revolt of the Jews under the leadership of Bar Kokhba. The suppression of this revolt by the Romans led to the final expulsion of the Jews from their land, which was then deliberately renamed by the Romans to Palestine. The Jews left their lands along the routes shown on the map with black dotted lines. A large portion went to Babylonia, where Jews had lived in a large community since the 7th century BCE. Many Jews went to Egypt and through Morocco to the Iberian Peninsula, later forming a large Jewish diaspora, the Sephardim. Many settled in Rome, southern France, and the German Rhineland, where they formed the largest Jewish diaspora of Ashkenazi Jews. A significant flow of Jews headed to the Balkan Peninsula through Turkish territories to the Azov and Crimea and up to the Dnieper, where, after 5 centuries, Kiev and Kievan Rus would emerge. Before that time, there was the Khazar Khaganate in the area, whose official religion was Judaism. These tragic events mark the end of the Second Temple era and the beginning of the era of the Mishnah and Talmud. In the emerging conditions of the threat of losing national statehood, rabbis and Jewish sages lifted the ban on the written formulation of the Word of God and began the work of systematizing the oral teachings of Judaism and its formulation in written form, known as the Mishnah. The structural diagram shows that this work began as early as the 40s BCE under Hillel and continued for several centuries, completing in the lifetime of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi around 200 CE. Even before the fall of Jerusalem in 69 CE, Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, foreseeing the upcoming events, founded the first religious academy in Yavne with the permission of Emperor Vespasian. As a result, about 200 years later, around 400 CE, the writing of the Jerusalem Talmud was completed, and around 600 CE, the expanded Babylonian Talmud was written, based on the Jerusalem Talmud. Thanks to the creativity of subsequent outstanding Jewish rabbis and sages, the Talmud continued to develop continuously thereafter. For example, Rabbi Gershom, who lived from 950 to 1028, introduced a correction to the Talmud prohibiting polygamy, limiting the number of wives to one. In 1280, Rabbi Moshe ben Shem Tov of Lyon compiled the book Zohar, which became the main source of Kabbalistic teaching. The book is a literary monument of the Jewish people. However, the most outstanding Jewish sage of the Middle Ages was recognized as Rabbi Moses ben Maimon, who lived in Cordoba, Andalusia, from 1135 to 1204. He was a multifaceted and outstanding scholar of his era, a philosopher, doctor, Talmudic theologian, rabbi, codifier of Torah laws, and spiritual leader of religious Jewry of his and subsequent generations. In the diasporas before the adoption of Christianity, Jewish culture particularly flourished in three areas: finance, administration, and medicine. Christianity was adopted in Greater Armenia and the Roman Empire in the 2nd to 4th centuries. However, in order to dominate, the initially small contradictions between Christianity and Judaism were intentionally expanded by Christian religious figures through the spread of various calumnies. Over time, this took on an antagonistic character and, as a consequence, turned into crusades against Jews and Muslims, and later to their expulsion from territories of residence throughout Europe. The beginning was laid in England in 1290. Then in 1306, Jews were expelled from France. In 1349 from Cologne, with numerous pogroms throughout Germany. In 1492, they were expelled from Spain. In 1495, from Lithuania. In 1497, from Portugal. Jews fled to Northern Europe and North Africa, Italy, Greece, and the Ottoman Empire. However, there was one exception. In 1334, Polish King Casimir the Great took Jews out from under German law, and from that time, Jewish communities were directly under the jurisdiction of the royal court. Thus, the Polish king expanded throughout Poland what Bolesław the Pious had done in his Kalisz Principality as early as 1264, after the decision of Casimir the Great, which ensured the safety and interests of Jews. The Kingdom of Poland became a haven for the Semitic people, expelled from the rest of Europe. By 1918, 3 million Jews lived in Poland. However, after numerous religious conflicts and wars within Polish Christianity from the second half of the 17th century, traditional Polish tolerance for Jews began to disappear. The situation of the Jews deteriorated sharply. 1648-1649, marked by brutal pogroms in Ukraine led by Bohdan Khmelnytsky, who headed the uprising of Ukrainian Cossacks against the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. 1880-1882, pogroms occurred throughout Germany. From 1881, numerous pogroms began in the south of Russia and Ukraine, causing a massive emigration of Jews living there. From this period until 1920, 2 million Jews left Russia. 1.5 million went to the USA, and the majority to Palestine, which was under Ottoman Empire control. It should be noted that the land in sparsely populated Palestine was privately owned and could be freely bought and sold. Even a foreigner could buy land on the condition that they would settle on it. The supply always exceeded demand. Baron Edmund de Rothschild provided invaluable financial and organizational assistance to Jewish settlers in establishing agricultural colonies in Palestine. 1894, the Dreyfus Affair in France was significant. Austrian journalist Theodor Herzl attended the trial. The wrongful trial of Dreyfus inspired Theodor Herzl to write the pamphlet The Jewish State in 1896, calling for the creation of a state for Jews. This topic was hotly debated at the First Zionist Congress in Basel in 1897. In 1917, the Balfour Declaration was issued, written by British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour to Lord Benjamin Rothschild. It began the intensification of Jews' struggle to create their national home. 1920 marked the beginning of the British Mandate in Eretz Israel, and simultaneously the beginning of the Jewish fight against British governors, who hindered Jewish immigration to Palestine despite the Balfour Declaration. When Britain declared war on Germany, in the entire Middle East, only the King of Jordan, the Jews of Palestine, and the Assyrian community in Iraq supported Britain. Ben-Gurion offered the British a list of 134,000 Jews ready to fight alongside England. Meanwhile, Arabs openly sided with the Germans, counting on their imminent victory. However, the British feared the 40 million Arab population more than the 500,000 Jews in Palestine. To appease the Arabs, in 1939, the British issued the White Paper, sharply limiting Jewish immigration to Palestine and promising the Arabs to establish an Arab state there. In these conditions, Ben-Gurion put forward a paradoxical political slogan: "We will help the English in the war as if there is no White Paper, and fight against the White Paper as if there is no war." It should be noted that the Holocaust, which started in 1933 and ended in 1945, was possible on such a sinister scale only due to the complicity and indifference of certain states obstructing Jewish immigration to Palestine and other countries. In 1939, there were 15 million Ashkenazi Jews and 1.7 million Sephardic Jews worldwide. By 1945, their number decreased by 6 million. Years of fierce struggle with English governors and the diplomatic efforts of Palestinian Jewish representatives, especially the renowned scientist Chaim Weizmann, in negotiations with the governments of the USA, UK, USSR, and others, concluded in 1948 with the proclamation of independence and the formation of the State of Israel, within the borders recognized by the UN. According to the UN resolution, Palestine was divided, as shown on the left map. However, the Arab countries Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Transjordan, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Yemen disagreed with the UN decision and attacked Israel. See the map in the middle. They intended to divide these territories among themselves, not to create a Palestinian state for the Arabs. The Israelis repelled the attack, defended the existence of Israel, and captured territories essential for state security. See the map on the right. Note, all the above-mentioned countries only gained their statehood and extensive territories from Britain and France after the defeat and dissolution of the Ottoman Empire in World War I. 1967. Arab states Egypt, Syria, Jordan, and Iraq, having received a large amount of modern military equipment from the USSR, contemplated revenge, constantly threatening Israel and preparing for an attack by moving troops to the border. In this situation, Israel was forced to conduct a preemptive strike in June 1967, inflicting a crushing defeat on the enemy, changing Israel's secure borders. Egypt lost the Sinai Peninsula, which served as a broad base for attacks on Israel. Syria lost the Golan Heights, from where constant shelling of Israel was conducted, and the West Bank of Palestine, occupied by Jordan, came under Israeli control. 1973. The Yom Kippur War. Egypt and Syria suddenly attacked Israel, but ultimately suffered defeat. Subsequently, Egypt and Jordan signed peace treaties with Israel. According to the peace agreement, Israel returned the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt. This was followed by several wars and military conflicts: the 1982 First Lebanese War, the 2006 Second Lebanese War with Hezbollah, the 2008 Operation Cast Lead with Hezbollah, and military confrontations with Hamas in 2014 and 2021. All these wars and conflicts ended with the temporary suppression and pacification of the enemy, intent on the destruction of Jews and Israel. There were peace agreements in 1993 and 1995 which could have led to the creation of a Palestinian state and peace. However, all these efforts failed due to the hostile attitude of Palestinian Arabs, incited and supported by radical Islam, led by the Ayatollahs of Iran and other totalitarian and authoritarian regimes hostile to Israel, including Qatar and Turkey. 2023, we are now witnessing the unfolding of an even more terrible war, sparked by the unprecedentedly brutal attack on Israel by the terrorist organization Hamas from Gaza. Currently, Israel is conducting a severe ground military operation in Gaza, aiming to completely destroy the military infrastructure of the terrorist organization Hamas and free more than 200 hostages. To ensure such events never recur, Hamas must be destroyed, not temporarily subdued. Am Yisrael Chai. In conclusion, I will quote from an article on the Great Jewish Migration of Ancient Jews and Israelites. Demographic calculations concerning the Great Jewish Migration of Ancient Jews and Israelites show that without the terrible catastrophes of Jewish history and the accompanying assimilation, just the descendants of Palestinian Jews would today number about 200 million people. Together with the numerous Ashkenazim, their number rises to 1 billion people who have dissolved into other nations. These grandiose figures demonstrate the greatness of the Jewish transfer of culture throughout the world, with the emergence of 3 world monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, as well as the exceptional significance of world Jewish civilization.